literally just took me about 2 hours to get this webcam working and embedded, so hopefully we're good. This is going to be a recording just about classical conditioning, then I'll do 2 more, one about operant conditioning and punishment versus reinforcement, and the schedules of reinforcement. So classical conditioning, the biggest thing you want to remember is that classical conditioning is obviously Pavlov, Ivan Pavlov, when he was studying dog salivation. He wasn't really intending to study learning. So we have to remember that classical conditioning is all about involuntary behavior. Things in our environment that we can't control, we just automatically react to. Like my cats in the morning, when my alarm goes off, it's just like automatic. They don't even think about it. They're just like, okay, time for breakfast, because they've associated the ringing of my alarm with the fact that Pan gets his Sheba and Tink and Toodles get their Meow Mix. They're very finicky cats. They have different food. Okay, so the 4 terms you need to remember for our purposes for classical conditioning, and hopefully my PowerPoint moves ahead a little bit here. So the first is, and I'm clicking on this, hopefully it moves down, is an unconditioned stimulus. An unconditioned stimulus is something that causes an automatic response. Remember, a stimulus is a thing that provokes some kind of response. When we talk about responses, those are actual behaviors. There we go, finally switch. So yeah, an unconditioned stimulus, it's going to be referred to sometimes as UCS, sometimes as US, but it's just naturally automatically triggers a response. In the case of Pavlov's dogs, it was he used meat powder, but so some kind of food or meat. So if you have an animal, you know this, they automatically respond to this. We as humans automatically respond to food, we start salivating. An unconditioned response then is that automatic response, that automatic behavior in response to the stimulus. Then on that next layer, once the unconditioned stimulus and the conditioned stimulus has been paired, and again remember, the conditioned stimulus must come first, and then the unconditioned stimulus comes shortly after. I know it's counterintuitive, but it's a conditioned stimulus that comes first, unconditioned stimulus that comes shortly after. So the conditioned stimulus was a previously neutral stimulus. We had no automatic reaction to it, but now because it's paired with an unconditioned stimulus, we're going to have a new reaction, and that reaction, that behavior, is called a conditioned response. It's a learned behavior, and as I mentioned, I would say about 95% of the time, and I've been changing that number, but let's say 95% of the time, the unconditioned and conditioned response is going to be almost identical. Sometimes it's slightly different, but normally it's the same exact thing. So let me take a minute and let's look at some examples that we didn't get a chance to go over in class. So let me pull that up. Oh, Toodles, you want to come say hi in the video? So Toodles is waiting while we pull it up. Okay. So we're going to look at some examples. The examples, just as normal, it's really helpful to look at examples and apply them. You guys are required to do that operant and classical conditioning worksheet. So we're going to go over some different examples that weren't on that worksheet, but oh my goodness gracious. Why is this taking so long? Okay, so I think the first example, while this is pulling itself up, is actually a real-life example. It's John B. Watson, we know. He's famous for the little Albert experiment, which was not a great experiment. Oh my gosh, did I say John Watson? I think it's John Watson. Okay, good. So John Watson conducted an experiment with little Albert, that's the baby, in which he paired together the loud sound with a white rat, and he made the child fear white rats, and eventually, because of generalization, everything nice and fluffy and white. So in this situation, take a minute, think, what's our unconditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, conditioned stimulus, conditioned response. I'm going to give you a second while you're watching this to think. Okay, so our unconditioned stimulus, again, this is a stimulus that provokes an automatic response. For little Albert, that unconditioned stimulus was the loud sound, the loud, startling noise. Again, it's a stimulus, something that causes a response. So in our unconditioned response, that is being scared or startled. The conditioned stimulus is something that was previously neutral. In this case, it's the white rat. Remember in the first stage, they showed that Albert originally was not afraid of white rats. He just thought it was a nice fluffy animal, right? And so that's a conditioned stimulus. The conditioned response would then be the fear of the white rat. Okay, let's do this number 3 here. So whenever you see a scary movie, you will always eat a box of Thin Mints. Now you find that just seeing Thin Mints makes you scared. Again, I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about that. Okay. Unconditioned stimulus is our scary movie. The unconditioned response is going to be fear. I'm not afraid of no scary movies, but most people would be, right? The conditioned stimulus is the box of Thin Mints, or just seeing the Thin Mints, and then your conditioned response is going to be scared. The next one here, you made a new person who is an excellent cook. After a few superb meals, you find yourself liking that person very much. So our unconditioned stimulus is, think about it, our unconditioned stimulus is going to be a superb meal. So a good meal, that's our unconditioned stimulus, and our unconditioned response is just going to be yummy, yummy, feeling good, liking that food. Our conditioned stimulus, which is previously neutral, that's going to be the person, that new person who's an excellent cook, and then our conditioned response is going to be, feeling good, liking that person. And the last example we'll go over here, one of your friends drinks several martinis while eating pepperoni pizza, except your friends wouldn't, unless they're over 21. After becoming sick, she refuses to eat pepperoni pizza. Again, I'm going to give you a couple seconds. Think. So our unconditioned stimulus is going to be the several martinis. And the several martinis, that's going to cause the unconditioned response of feeling sick. Your conditioned stimulus is going to be then the pepperoni pizza. And then your conditioned response is going to be feeling sick about pepperoni pizza. And wouldn't that be a shame to not love pizza anymore? Oh my goodness. Okay, hopefully this helps clarify some things, and it's just good to go back to and reference these ideas. So that's our video on classical conditioning. Be sure to let me know if you have any questions.